Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first podcast episode of Underdog Podcast. I do have a YouTube channel for you, those of you who don't know. I do upload regular hockey content on there. Haven't uploaded in a couple of days as I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to do in regards to my podcast and was kind of writing notes and stuff on the podcast. So, yeah, I'm going to be uploading again on the channel very soon. Just wanted to do a quick podcast episode just to kind of fill you guys in on what you're going to be getting in this podcast, what kind of content we're going to be covering. Like I said, I do have a YouTube channel on there. I covered like my top 15 prospects from the 2019 NHL draft, as well as I covered my top 6 sleepers from the 2019 NHL draft. So on the podcast, I'm kind of going to continue a little bit from where I left off with my videos. Today we're kind of going to be talking about some of the contracts that have been signed recently. I know most of you guys probably understand like everything that got signed out of free agency on July 1st, as it's late into September, and most hockey fans probably already know everything that's been, signed already. Sorry, I apologize for that, but yeah, most hockey fans already probably know everything that's been signed since then. So we're just gonna go ahead from stuff that's happened within the past month. Most of it's been more recent than that, but yeah, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start giving you guys my breakdowns on the specific divisions. I'm going to be doing the Atlantic Division today. So today's going to be my Atlantic Division breakdown as well. I'm going to just be talking about some contracts that got signed. And that's pretty much it for today's podcast episode. So let's get right into it. We're going to go ahead and start with the contract talk. The first one, obviously, I'm going to start with the biggest because this is what everyone wants, probably my opinion on. It's the Mitch Marner contract. As you guys probably know, he signed 6 years at $10.893 million. So yeah, that's his annual average value. Pretty much $11 million, exactly what the number came out to be right before he actually signed the deal. Everyone knows that he apparently got leaked that he turned down 7 or 8 years at whatever at $11 million. So I feel like that kind of put the pressure on Mitch Marner and his agent. I feel like he came out after he signed the deal and said that his plan and what he had told Kyle, that he didn't want to miss any sort of training camp really, and he didn't want to miss any games. So it's his intention to be there the entire time. I think that this also benefited the Maple Leafs a little bit, kind of give them a hand in trade negotiations, as if he wanted to be there for training camp and games, he would have had to bend for something. And I feel like the term is what he bent on. I feel like Marner was trying to go for 5 years, just identical to Matthews, but Toronto clearly wasn't interested in that. They bought themselves 1 year of Marner's unrestricted free agency, which is pretty good for them. I mean, in my opinion, he's probably overpaid by about $1 million, $1.5 million. That's probably my guess. I mean, I haven't watched any preseason, but on that wonderful website Cap Friendly, everyone should go check that out. There are some Leafs fans that have been saying that he's been okay in preseason, nothing too crazy, but nothing disappointing as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope Marner has a good year just for his sake. I hope he plays up to his contract, and I really hope that he proves that he's worth the $11 million they're spending on him, because that's a lot of money, and he kind of handcuffs them with that contract. I don't know how Toronto's going to figure that whole situation out. I mean, when you look at their roster, they're paying $40 million, in annual average value to 4 players. But if you actually look at it, I think this year they're paying something like $51.7 million or something to 4 players. That's over half the cap, which is insane. I don't know how you can contend with a team that you're paying half the cap to 4 players. Like, it's just nuts. Obviously, they only have one defenseman who's locked up past this year, and that's Morgan Riley, and he's on a very team-friendly deal, but he's due for a pay raise in 2 years from now when his contract is up. But that defensive blue line is going to be blown up next summer. I'm personally a Winnipeg Jets fan. Most of you guys know, like, from the YouTube channel, that I have made that very clear, as I do have Jets gear in the back of my videos. And honestly, I know how it feels to have your blue line blown up because that's what happened to us this off season. So, Toronto fans, I feel for you next summer because I don't know how you guys are going to be able to get all those people signed. I mean, you might be able to keep one of Muzzin or Barry, but I really have no idea how you guys are going to be able to do this. It's going to be an insane cap crunch next summer, and I'm really excited to see what Dubas does. Let's move on to the next contract. I'm going to go ahead and head to the one Jets contract that got signed this offseason, or the one notable one that I really want to take a look at, and that's the Josh Morrissey contract. I wish it was Patrick Laine or Kyle Connor, but I also am really excited about this Morrissey contract. I think the guy's only going to get way better. He signed 8 years. That's a long time. Jets bought up a lot of his unrestricted free agency, and this is going to be great, as I think he's going to be a core piece. Obviously, that's what the Jets think. He's going to be a core piece to our blue line for the next 8 years. 9 years, actually, he's still going to be with the team. That's insane. Anyways, he actually signed for a $6.25 million annual average value. That's pretty crazy. I mean, he has zero signing bonus throughout the whole contract. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention about the Mitch Marner contract that I thought was insane is that they're paying him $29.6 million in signing bonus in the first 2 years alone. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, only Toronto can pull that off. I think his base salary throughout the entire contract is like $700,000 or something like that. Like, it's absolutely insane. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, but the Morrissey contract, he has zero signing bonus throughout his whole contract. I mean, I don't think the guy's really worried about getting paid off the start. I mean, he's going to take his money and he's going to relax. I mean, he's set for life off that one contract. I mean, so is Marner, but still. Morrissey's set for life, and he obviously made it very clear that he wanted to be in Winnipeg long term, and I really appreciate that, as sadly in Canada here we don't get a lot of players that want to stay with the team long term. So when one does, like Morrissey signing 8 years, it just feels great. I think this is a great move by Chevy. I think he really capitalized on Morrissey's interest in signing an extension early, because he saw everything that was going on with all the RFAs this summer, and I'm not sure if he wanted nothing to do with it again after having to deal with Laine and Connor, but I think he definitely made the right move here. He pulled the trigger, signed the big contract, gave Morrissey a big ticket, and I honestly think Morrissey is a really underrated defenseman in the league. I think he's a great shutdown guy, and honestly, sorry New York Rangers fans, but he made Trouba look way better than he actually is. I think a lot of people might be disappointed with Trouba's play this year. I don't know how he's going to handle being that true number one guy. I hope he can play good, because it'd be unfortunate for you guys to have given him that big ticket and then he just doesn't play up to his contract. That'll be really bad. I mean, I don't really have bad things to say about Trouba for when he left Winnipeg. I mean, the articles came about him like respecting his wife's career decisions and all that, and you know, I have nothing wrong with what Trouba did as a Jets fan. I mean, it sucks to lose him, but it's not that big of a deal. We got Pionk, and I think he's going to be solid. I'll get to that later. The next contract we're going to move on is another one that's technically not an RFA from this year, but one from next year. That's Clayton Keller. He signed 8 years at $7.15 million, and that is his annual average value. He has $6 million in signing bonus combined in his years 1 and 3. So just a little bit of signing bonus, a nice padding his wallet a little bit, getting the money. I don't know if Keller is worth that money yet. I'm not going to go out and say, oh, well, he's never going to be worth that money, because you never know. I mean, obviously, Chayka and Tocchet think he's going to grow into that 80 point guy. I mean, I would say 7.15 is around like 60 or like 70 to 80 points. I mean, I really hope Keller can play up to that and really surpass that number, because it would be really good. I mean, I think the deal is going to be all right for Arizona. I mean, hopefully Keller can keep growing. That would be really great. And then we'll see what's going on. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about the Keller contract. I know I'm not a big Arizona fan. I don't watch them too much. I think Keller is a great player. And honestly, this, as a Jets fan, is also really good, because it kind of gives Cal Connor a bit of a comparable. There's some sort of stat where Connor only has 11 more points in 11 more games than Keller. I know Connor probably scores more goals. I know for a fact he scores more goals than Keller does. But he only has 11 more points in 11 more games. So it's not that big of a difference at all between them. So this is a great comparable for Chevy to look at. And honestly, I would love to see Kyle Connor get locked up 8 times 7.15. That would be a steal, in my opinion. So, anyways, we're gonna move on to Ivan Provorov of the Philadelphia Flyers. He is one of the RFAs this summer. He signed a big deal at 6 years at $6.75 million. Pardon me. No signing bonus. Well, I didn't really look at the signing bonus on his deal because it's not really that big of a deal. But I don't know. I think that's a really solid contract for Philly. I mean, he had worse numbers than Morrissey, and it kind of sucks that they only got him signed for 6 years. I mean, it would have been probably nicer for them to get 8 years, but I feel like Provorov would be a guy who'd probably be demanding an extra, maybe even 1.5 to 2 million extra dollars on that contract if they picked it up in another 2 years. So, I think this is a good contract for Philly. I mean, Provorov's a stud. He did have worse numbers than Morrissey last year, but I think he has a little more like offensive tools, and I think he can really improve, and I think he can really become a very good player. And I think that 6.75 million AAV is going to be an absolute steal in 2 years. I think Provorov is going to be an absolute stud, probably top 10 defenseman in the league. I think this is really good for Philly. Moving on to Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He signed a 3 years, $5 million contract. I mean, with a total worth of $15 million. The really big thing about this, and you guys will see as it's the same in Charlie McAvoy, who I'll be talking about after, is that his third-year qualifying offer is $7 million. So basically, Werenski's setting himself up, and worst-case scenario is he gets to that third year, the contract expires, and in the offseason, he has arbitration rights. He goes to arbitration, gets a 1-year, $7 million contract, and then guess what? He's a UFA in that next year. And the best part about this is, after that TV deal kicks in, the new TV deal, the salary cap's probably going to rise to like 95 million. Maybe even 100. You never know. I never know what's going to rise to. Especially with the expansion draft happening as well. That'll probably increase revenue and increase the cap too. So you never know. I think Werenski made such a smart move here, and I don't know. I think this is unreal. I mean, the guy is a genius for doing this. I think Tortorella, everyone kind of saw like Tortorella's comments on the whole situation, how he said like all the things he did. I don't think it really made a big difference. Maybe it made a little difference on Werenski, but I'm not sure. I mean, I guess we'll never really know. I'm pretty sure that no one's ever going to actually find out stuff like that, but it's always fun to speculate. I mean, it's kind of like the Charlie McAvoy contract as well. I'll just go ahead and state that one. Charlie McAvoy signed 3 years, $4.9 million a year. His third-year qualifying offer is $7.3 million, though. So he's setting himself up as well. I mean, Werenski and McAvoy, your agents are geniuses, okay? They're going to get a huge ticket when those deals expire. I mean, if they keep improving the way that it looks like they're going to, they're going to be in for a huge raise. Like, I'm saying probably $9 million at least for Werenski and McAvoy. That's my guess on their next contracts. And while we're on the topic of Charlie McAvoy and the Bruins, we might as well talk about Brandon Carlo. He signed a 2-year deal at $2.85 million a year. It's not too bad for Carlo. I mean, I know I'm not a big Bruins fan, so I don't really watch him quite often, but honestly, I thought maybe he'd get a little more than that, maybe 2 years at $3 million a year. I know that the Bruins are kind of cap-strapped, and they're very good at getting good value contracts, but I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, I know the Backus deal, I think, is up in 2 years, so that frees up a lot of cap for when Carlo needs a new contract. I mean, I also don't think Carlo's going to be a top pairing guy. He might grow into that. I'm not sure. He probably is going to be more like a second pairing kind of guy. That's what he seems like to be for me. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this contract might end up becoming a bit expensive in 2 years for the Bruins. Maybe, since he's a right-handed defenseman, right? I mean, I would assume they'd have to pay a premium for him if he also grows into like a top 2 guy, like a top pairing guy. Like, they're probably going to have to pay a lot for him. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good contract for Carlo. He gets to really prove himself and maybe get a big ticket in that after these 2 years, and then we'll go from there. While we're talking about defensemen, I might as well go to, honestly, probably the craziest deal. I didn't see this coming at all, and this is the Thomas Chabot contract. The guy signed an 8-year extension. He has 1 year left on his entry-level contract. He was up for a new deal next summer. Clearly, these GMs want nothing to do with RFA situation, so they're getting these done. And honestly, I was surprised Ottawa paid the guy. I mean, we all know Melnick is super cheap. Not sure how much that affects Dorian, but I know from the moves we've seen in the past, I mean, he's kind of shows they don't really want to pay. So, yeah, Thomas Chabot, he got an 8-year contract at $8 million a year. That is an absolute payday for Thomas Chabot. I mean, the guy is a stud. He's a great defenseman. I mean, he's worth the money easily, in my opinion. I think he is a true first pairing left-handed defenseman, and I think the guy's going to be great. I mean, this contract's going to look awesome for them in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, they're pretty much projecting him to be like the next Erik Karlsson, and I can agree. I mean, I think he's going to be absolutely unreal, and I love this contract for the Ottawa Senators. Moving back to the Philadelphia Flyers, we might as well go ahead and talk about Travis Konechny. He signed a 6-year, not even extension, right? Because he was an RFA this season. Yes, he's an RFA this summer. He signed a 6-year deal, $5.5 million a year, $5 million in signing bonuses over the first 2 years. That's really good. I mean, the guy set himself up, padding his wallet, real nice. It's an awesome deal for him, and I'm really excited about that. Honestly, like Travis Konechny, he's someone to me as like maybe not. I'm not a Philly fan, so I don't watch them all the time. But to me, like he doesn't really get talked about a lot. But I mean, when I watched him play the Jets, I thought he was really good. I mean, he flies under the radar, and honestly, he's a great player. And I'm glad he got a nice big ticket to set himself up. This contract I'm about to tell you guys was one of the RFAs from this summer that really surprised me. I know, like, just not even as a player surprised me, but contract. Like, honestly, I expected him to get paid a lot more. Well, not a lot, but maybe like $1 million, two more than this. This is Brock Besser. He signed a 3-year deal with $5.875 million a year. He's getting $6.6 million in signing bonuses over the first 2 years. So once again, padding his wallet very nicely. I mean, I honestly thought maybe he'd be closer to 6.57 even. So yeah, I thought it'd be a lot more than this, and I thought maybe Vancouver was going to have to make some sort of move to get Brock Besser signed, but I guess that's not the case. I mean, the guy clearly took some less money, and honestly, as a Jets fan, I absolutely love this. Because, not going to lie, I think Besser is a way more complete player than Patrick Laine. And he scores a lot. Like Besser, if you look at his numbers, he was projected to actually put up a good amount of points and a good amount of goals. And, honestly, I love this as a comparable for the Jets. I know Patrick Laine will probably be asking for another, million more than this, maybe. It honestly depends. I mean, a 3-year deal for Laine scares me a lot, just because of that new TV deal that's going to be up, or just renewed once these 3-year contracts are up. So a 3-year deal for Laine scares me because I really see him growing his game. I mean, a lot of people are hating on him, saying he's only one-dimensional. Yeah, I agree. Right now, he's a one-dimensional player. All he does is score, and that's it. He's an absolute liability in his own end, and I can't even get started on that. As a Jets fan, I could say so much, but honestly, I really hope the Jets lock him up. 2 years, maybe 3. You never know. 2 years would be a great time to lock him up. I think that's perfect. Bufflin's contract expires in 2 years. If he's still around, we'll get to his whole situation later, but if he's still around then and still comes back, he's going to take definitely a pay cut. So that'll free up some money, and then Perreault's gone as well. So yeah, there's lots of money there in 2 years. 3 years, there's going to be lots of money as well. I mean, who knows? I just think that the Jets really need to lock up Laine. I'm not a fan of any Jets trade right now for Winnipeg. With everything that's kind of been going on, I think his trade stock is kind of lower than it was after everything that's happened. So I'm not sure. I don't think trading him now is the right time. If anything, sign him to a 2-year deal. Get the season started. Hopefully he gets off to a good foot, and if it's just not working in the locker room or whatever, and you can trade him then. I mean, honestly, I think the guy's going to be a 50-goal scorer in a couple of years. So, I mean, I don't really want him to go. It'd be like if Washington traded Ovi at the beginning of his career. I know you can't really compare Laine and Ovechkin because Ovechkin was kind of always a more complete player, even though he wasn't the best in both ends. but he was definitely better than Line is now. I mean, it would be like trying to trade Ovechkin. Like, imagine if Washington did that. You know how stupid they would feel now? Because Ovechkin is a 50-goal scorer. Man, the guy is getting in his mid to late 30s, and he is still putting up points and goals like crazy. I mean, this guy is unreal. So honestly, for Winnipeg's sake, I just hope we get him locked up maybe 2 to 3 years. If they could get a long-term deal in place, that's not too crazy. Like, I'm thinking like 7 times 8.5. Like, even that I would take. It's crazy to think about that. I think the bridge deal does make more sense. But if Line is not bending, I mean, like, I'm not sure what Chevy's going to do. He's obviously patient, and he's only going to do what's best for the team, and that's all that matters to me. I could care less about everything else. Okay, enough about Line talk right now. Let's move on and finish these contracts that I wanted to get to. Jared Spurgeon, he signed a 7-year deal, 7-year contract extension. Sorry, he still's got 1 year left. This contract extension has an annual average value of $7.575 million. He's getting $8 million in signing bonus over the first 2 years. I honestly don't like this contract at all for the Wild. I mean, the guy is 29. You're giving him 7 years. He's going to be 36 by the time this contract's up. And if we look at contracts like this around the league, I mean, look at Keith and Seabrook. They were way better than Spurgeon is. They're still, like they were way better when they got the contract than Spurgeon is. And it looks bad now for Chicago. Like, that Seabrook contract looks terrible for Chicago. And honestly, the Keith one doesn't look that much better either. So, I don't know. I'm not a fan of this contract for the Wild. They definitely overpaid. I mean, I would have said maybe if you give him 4 to 5 years at $6 million a year, that's a great deal for them. But 7 at 7.575, that's just too much. I'm not sure what the Wild's thing is with overpaying old guys, but they did it with Zuccarello. I mean, obviously everyone knows how the Zane Suter contracts are going to turn out and how they are now already. I mean, Zuccarello got overpaid, he's older, and now Spurgeon's getting overpaid, and he's going to go till he's 36 on this deal, so that's kind of crazy. The one good thing for the Wild, though, Kevin Fiala signs a 2-year contract at $3 million a year. I mean, I think this is a steal for Minnesota. I think that Fiala is going to become a legit top 6 forward, and honestly, I see him being a great player. I mean, one of the people I actually know, my uncle, he is not a huge, he's a Wild fan. He lives in Minnesota. He's not optimistic a lot because he's been let down so much by the Wild, but I told him he's got to be proud about this Kevin Fiala contract because it's going to be great for Minnesota. I think this contract is unreal, and he's going to show that he's worth a lot more over these next 2 years. Going to the Devils now, we're going to talk about Pavel Zacha. As you guys may have seen with Ratio coming out, he's had a lot of shit to say about Pavel Zacha. If you guys didn't see, he came out saying, I don't fucking care where you sign. You can sign in Europe. You can sign in blah. You can sign there. I don't fucking care. You'll never play in the NHL because we have your rights. And then look at that. 2 days? And within 2 days of that coming out, Zacha signs a 3-year deal at $2.25 million a year. I mean, that's right around where he should be. I know the guy wanted a lot of money, but you haven't even lived up near what you're supposed to be at all. And it's crazy to think that he's even going around trying to get paid when he's basically the 4th line center right now. I mean, sign the deal like you did, go out there, prove your worth, and then in 3 years, cash in. All right, it's not that big of a deal. Whatever. We're gonna move on. I have nothing to say about Pavel Zacha. That guy is not. I don't know. I'm not a fan. So let's move on. But my last contract I really wanted to talk about. I just think this is awesome. I mean, it's really good for the sport and really good for San Jose, and that is Joe Thornton re-signing with them at 1 year at $2 million a year. I mean, obviously he's taking less money. He's taking a pay cut to make things work for the Sharks. And, you can't really go wrong. I mean, he's probably going to slot into that 3rd center role.
Honestly, you got to love this contract for the San Jose Sharks. I mean, Joe Thornton's a great guy to have in the room. I mean, if you guys haven't listened to any interviews or anything he's done, he's made it very clear that he just loves being around the guys. He's a big hockey guy, and I see him for sure after he retires, sticking with the team, even being a trainer, just so he can travel all the time with the team. I think Joe Thornton is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame for sure, and I definitely think that the Sharks are going to retire his number as well as give him a contract for as long as he wants. I mean, the guy is an absolute legend in San Jose, and everything he's done for the organization has been amazing. And honestly, if there's one team I would want to see win the cup this year, it would be San Jose. I would love to see Thornton get his cup, and maybe if Marleau resigns there or something happens that Marleau gets to lift the cup as well. That would be a very good ending to the 2019-2020 season. So yeah, as that is the last contract I was wanting to talk about, we're now going to get into our divisional breakdown. So basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to talk about the Atlantic Division today. In the next podcast, we're probably going to talk about the Metro and the Central, and then leave the Pacific for another future episode. Or maybe even a YouTube video. I might do that. I'm not sure yet. But today we're just going to talk about the Atlantic Division. The first team, I think, or like I was going to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and go from who I'm going to think is going to finish first in the division and go down the list there. Kind of break down their 2018-19 record, how many points they had, their head coach, GM, moves they've made, and what I project them to end up finishing with in regards to points. So that's what I'm going to end up doing. And yeah, so here we go. We're going to start in the Atlantic. Obviously, my pick for the team to finish first is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Last year, if you guys didn't know, in their 2018-19 season, they had a record of 62 wins, 16 losses, and 4 overtime losses for a total of 128 points. Historically, one of the best regular season records in all time, literally. The head coach, obviously, if you guys don't know, John Cooper. I'm not a huge fan of John Cooper. It seemed like against Columbus in last year's playoffs, he just seemed like he was lost. Columbus and Tortorella were just throwing the whole gauntlet at him, and Cooper didn't even look like he knew what was happening. So, honestly, I could see a situation where if they don't have at least 15 to 20 wins in the first 25 games of the season, that Cooper is gone. Like they have to be good this year. They have such a good team. They're just set up to win. They should be the cup winner. They should have been the cup winner the past 2 years and probably for the next 2 years as well. The general manager, Julien Brisebois, honestly, I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, obviously the big question mark right now is the fact that Braden Point is still unsigned. Obviously, Braden Point is a big part of the team. I think he's the number one center for the future. Honestly, I'm not sure what his contract's going to look like. Apparently, Tampa Bay is offering him something like 3 times 5.8, something like Brock Besser got. I don't see Point even getting close to that. For 3 years, I'd put him at least 8 or 9 million a year. Or probably, I don't know. Tampa Bay is a little different because you got to factor in like taxes and the rest of the team comparables, Kucherov, Stamkos. I mean, I don't know. I think with Tampa, he'd probably end up long term, like 8 years at probably 8.5 to 9.5 a year. Somewhere in between Stamkos and Kucherov is where I put him. Maybe now that the Marner contract's gotten signed, he goes 10 million, 8 times 10. I just Tampa Bay doesn't seem like a team that bends for any player, so I'm not sure. I don't know if that point deal is going to get done. I mean, if it gets done before the start of the season and within probably 20, honestly, Tampa Bay's probably good enough even without Point that they still really tear up the Atlantic, but as soon as they get Point signed, they're just going to be absolutely tearing it up, just like they did last year. Second place, I actually have the Boston Bruins. In the 2018-19 season, they had a record of 49-24-9 for 107 points. Obviously, their head coach, Bruce Cassidy, I think he's one of the best coaches in the NHL right now. General manager, Don Sweeney, he's done a pretty good job. I mean, look at the McAvoy and Carlo contracts. Those are really good. And look at the rest of the Boston Bruins. They have very team-friendly deals. And honestly, it is working for them a lot. And it seems like the culture in Boston is that they're going to end up with you either stay and take a team-friendly deal or you're gone, because look at everyone around that locker room. They're all taking team-friendly deals. I forgot to mention for the Tampa Bay team, my projected 2019-2020 points for them is 116 points. I don't think they're going to have as good as a regular season as they did last year. But I still definitely think they're going to be finishing first in the Atlantic, and I put them at 116 points. Now back to Boston. Bruce Cassidy, like I said, probably one of the best NHL coaches. I really like him. Don Sweeney's done a pretty good job this offseason. I think we're probably going to see Kevin Miller getting traded here soon. Um, I don't know though. I mean, I guess we'll find out. I'm not sure on the Boston cap situation off the top of my head, but most likely he'll probably be traded. So yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about Boston. I mean, GM's done a great job with the McAvoy and Carlo contracts, handled them very well. Excited to see what happens with Krug next year. That'll be a very interesting. Honestly see him walking in free agency to another team, but who knows? Maybe he wants to stay in Boston. I put their projected points for the 2019-2020 season at 110, and I think they finished second. Now the Toronto Maple Leafs, I actually put them as third in the Atlantic. And for their record, I ended up putting them, or their record for last year, pardon me, was 46, 28, and 8 for 100 points. Their head coach is Mike Babcock, GM Kyle Dubas. Their projected points for me, in my opinion, for 2019-2020 is 99 points. I think they're going to have a bit worse of a regular season. Just the way I see this is that I feel like the Atlantic has gotten better. Most of the teams have gotten better. So yeah, I just don't see Toronto having a better year, especially with I think Tampa's going to have a little bit of a worse year. Boston probably going to have a better year in my opinion. But I guess we're just going to see. I mean, Toronto, the Mitch Marner contract, obviously, like I said, I think it's a little bit of an overpayment. And honestly, I'm not a fan of Kyle Dubas. I mean, I just don't think he's a very good general manager. I mean, obviously he's very smart and can handle himself very well, but it seems as if he likes to give his players what they want. So yeah, I'm not sure. And honestly, if they don't win the cup this year, I think it's over for the Toronto Maple Leafs for the next couple of years. I mean, unless Kyle Dubas pulls some type of unless Kyle Dubas pulls some kind of black mystery, I don't even know what to call it, kind of stuff where he completely pulls off some shenanigans and gets the blue line back together, they're going to be in trouble. Like I said before, the only defenseman that is signed past next year is Morgan Riley, and everyone else has to be re-signed. Tyson Barrie's looking for a massive upgrade. He's going to get a massive pay raise. I easily put him at least $7 million a year. I just don't think Toronto can afford that, especially if they want to try to keep someone like Muzzin or any of those guys. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of an issue for Toronto on their back end. In fourth place, I actually have the Montreal Canadiens. This one was hard for me. Between Montreal and Florida, it's really I don't know. I think it's close. I mean, I could definitely see Florida ending up taking the fourth spot in the Atlantic. I think Montreal and Florida will definitely fight for it. Montreal, I'll go through them right now. Their 2018-19 record was 44, 30, and 8 for 96 points. Head coach Claude Julien, general manager Marc Bergevin. Their 2019 projected points for me is 95 points. I think they're not going to have as many points as they did last year. Obviously, for me, it all depends on how Carey Price plays. If he plays exceptional and is in form, I think Montreal makes the playoffs. I mean, their forward group is all right. They have some really good players, and this is kind of like their last shot at really getting a cup run or even a playoff run with these guys, because I think even if next year, if they're not in the playoff, if they're not in a playoff spot next year, their guys are going to be gone at the deadline. And even this year, if Montreal's out of a playoff spot at the trade deadline, I see Gallagher and just some other players getting traded. I just don't think Montreal can risk losing these guys to free agency for nothing. Even though I feel like most of them will re-sign. Maybe they end up trading them at the deadline and then they come back as a free agent. Florida, like I said, could definitely take that fourth spot. Their 2018-19 record was 36, 32, and 14 for 86 points. Their head coach is now Joel Quenneville, which is going to help so much in Florida. General manager Dave Talon. I have their projected points for the 1920 season as 89 points. The only reason I put them low, I mean, I could definitely see them easily getting over 90 points considering they have Bobrovsky and they added some defensive help. And honestly, their forward group is really underrated in my opinion. The only reason why I have them outside of the playoffs over Montreal is because I'm not a big fan of Bobrovsky. I mean, the guy got 7 times 10 or something like that. I think that's his contract. I think that's way too much. I think it's going to not look good for Florida in a couple of years. I mean, give it 3 years and that contract might not look very good. I mean, you look at other goalies around the league, they prove they can play past into their mid to late 30s. And I don't know, I hope for Florida that Bobrovsky stays good, but he's been known as a streaky goaltender in the past, and it's either really good or really bad. So I really just hope that for Florida's sake, Bobrovsky plays good. It's the same with Montreal. Honestly, to me, whoever's goalie plays better is who's going to make the playoffs. And that's just my opinion. Florida obviously made some good pickups with Bobrovsky, and then I think Sekera they signed maybe. I think that might be who they got. I'm not on or Strawman. No, it was Strawman, right? I think that's correct. Anyways, they definitely added some D help, and their forward group is very underrated, so they could definitely take that 4th spot. Number 6, I have the Buffalo Sabres. If you guys didn't know, their 18-19 record was 33, 39, and 10 for 76 points. I honestly thought that they would have had a better record last year. It looked like they were on quite a run for a bit there when like Skinner was playing really well, and obviously Reinhardt had a breakout year, and I don't know. Head coach Rolf Kruger has done a great job there. I mean, he's very good with coaching his players. Obviously, when you have talented players like Eichel and Middlestat and Reinhardt and Skinner, it's pretty easy to be good at coaching them. But yeah, Ralph Kruger's done a pretty good job. Same with Jason Botterill. He's done a really good job as a general manager. I think there's definitely some, I wouldn't even call it an issue. Maybe just like an extended. They have too many defensemen, realistically, is what I'm trying to say. Someone needs to move, whether it's Ristolainen or someone else down the lineup. Someone's got to go. They just can't have that many defensemen. I know that Bogosian is hurt, and then what is it? There's a Montour. Didn't he? I think he broke his wrist or something. So they have some injured guys, but someone has to go. There's just too many defensemen there. I put their 1920 projected points as 79 points. I think they finished 6th in the division. I just don't really think they're better than Montreal or Florida. I think both the teams could easily finish ahead of them unless Buffalo goes on some kind of run. I just don't think they have the goaltending to really get far. And honestly, besides like Dahlin, in my opinion, I'm not a huge fan of their decor. Like they have some good guys, but it's not like an like outstanding defensive core. I mean, Florida's kind of the same way, but they just have a bunch of like solid players. Number 7 in the division, I have the Detroit Red Wings. This was hard for me. I think Detroit is definitely a better team than Ottawa. But I don't know. You just never know with Detroit. They seem to be hit or miss for me. Their 18-19 record was 32, 40, and 10 for 74 points. Head coach Jeff Blashill, he's done a really good job. I mean, it's kind of hard when you have a team who's pretty much doomed to do bad. I mean, you just got to keep your head up and keep on going. I think he's been doing a good job coaching the young guys. General manager Stevie Yzerman. I'm a huge fan of Stevie Y. I mean, the guy is a genius. Obviously, he does a good job. Like, look at his pick this year. Goes completely off the board. Picks Maria Sider. I was shocked when he did that. But it turns out that the guy's a complete stud. So, I mean, I don't blame him for taking that. So, yeah, no, I mean, I have their projected points for 1920 season as 72. I definitely think they're not going to be as good. I think a lot of the extra points are going to be heading towards the other teams in the division, except for Ottawa, of course. So, yeah, I think Detroit takes a step back in regards to points, but I think their players definitely take a step forward. And honestly, if Stevie Y can work his magic on the team, they could be a really good team in about 4 years. I think Detroit will be a really solid team come that time. And number 8, I have the Ottawa Senators. I'm sure you guys probably aren't surprised by this at all. Their 18-19 record was 29, 47, and 6 for 64 points. Their head coach is DJ Smith, general manager Pierre Dorian, not a fan of him, by the way. I have their 1920 projected points as 62. I just don't see them getting any better. I mean, their young guys have been improving, and obviously They will improve over time. Colin White got a nice contract over the summer. Shabbat got a nice contract extension, like we discussed earlier. I just see Ottawa as the worst team in the league by far. I guess not even close. Like their only like true like shine and brightness in their team is Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, and Thomas Shabbat, and their youngsters like Formanton, Batherson, Balsers, like all those guys. They have a lot of good prospects. Brandstrom too. I mean, it sucks that Wolanin got hurt. I mean, that's really unfortunate for him. It's a long recovery with his injury, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't really affect Ottawa that much. I mean, they're going to be last regardless. I mean, they haven't really done anything to get any better, and I mean, I don't blame them. They're kind of going through that rebuilding phase, but the thing with Ottawa that scares me is I think like their owner is so cheap. Melnick's so cheap. I don't see Dorian doing a very good job. Like, I'm not a fan of Dorian. I was honestly surprised they paid Shabbat 8x8. That really surprised me. But I definitely see this Ottawa team getting Alexis Lafreniere first overall in the 2020 draft. It's unfortunate that their pick last year ended up going to the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, Colorado is so stacked. It's stupid. I'll get to that in the central breakdown when I do that. But it's unfortunate that they didn't get that third overall pick, and they could have really used another guy like Byram to really solidify that top defensive pairing for the next 10 years that they could have had with Brandstrom and Byram. It would have been really, really helpful for them to get that. I mean, also, they couldn't have complained about getting a guy like Turcotte or Doc as well. Like, there's a lot of good players that they could have got this year. It's unfortunate that their pick ended up in the hands of Colorado. I mean, I guess that's what happens when you trade that pick and then your team goes to shit. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, Ottawa's definitely the worst team in the league by far. I don't see any team finishing even close to them at the bottom. Maybe a team like LA maybe finishes that low. I'm not sure, depending on if they trade Jonathan Quick or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, that was my divisional breakdown for the Atlantic. I'll re-summarize. Number one, I have Tampa Bay Lightning finishing with 116 points in the 1920 season. And in second place, I have the Boston Bruins finishing with 110 points. And third, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs finishing with 99 points. In number four, I have the Montreal Canadiens finishing with 95 points. Number five, I have the Florida Panthers finishing with 89 points. In number six, I have the Buffalo Sabres finishing with 79 points. In number 7, I have the Detroit Red Wings finishing with 72 points. And number 8, I have the Ottawa Senators finishing with 62 points. For the Metro, just a heads up, I have the 5th team finishing with 91 points. So I have the Metro actually getting that second wild card. I just don't really... What am I saying? Never mind. There's one wild card going to each division. Sorry, that's my bad. But what I was going to say is that, yeah, I mean, honestly, the Metro is going to be a sweet division. I'm going to break them down in a future podcast. I'll do the Metro and the Central in the next podcast, and then the Pacific I'm probably going to do in a YouTube video or something. I'm going to be posting this podcast on YouTube as well as a couple other podcast spots. So, yeah, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you guys are coming here as a new listener, feel free to check out my YouTube. It is Underdog Hockey with a space between Underdog and Hockey. It is 2 words, not 1 word. So you guys can go check that out if you want. Yeah, so please feel free to subscribe on there. I will update you guys on when I'm posting a new podcast episode or if I'm posting a new YouTube video. So, yeah, I will see you guys all in the next podcast. Peace out.